High above the arid plains of southern Peru, etched into the earth like a giant sketchbook, lie the Nazca Lines, ancient geoglyphs so vast they can only be fully seen from the sky. But what if these mysterious drawings, some stretching longer than a football field, aren't just artistic expressions? What if they're hiding secrets that challenge everything we think we know about the people who created them? For decades, researchers have puzzled over these enormous figures: birds, spiders, even what looks like an astronaut carved into the desert floor over 2,000 years ago. Yet despite all the theories, the Nazca Lines still guard mysteries most people have never even heard of. Picture this: a civilization with no written language, no advanced technology, somehow plotting out intricate designs across miles of barren land. Designs so precise they remain perfectly intact centuries later. How did they do it, and more importantly, why? Some say these lines were celestial maps pointing to stars or solstices. Others believe they were part of sacred rituals, perhaps even pathways for the gods. But what if the truth is even stranger? What if the Nazca Lines were never meant to be seen by human eyes at all? This is where things get truly fascinating. Today, we're diving deep into 30 of the most astonishing, rarely discussed secrets of the Nazca Lines and enigmas that defy easy explanation. From hidden symbols only visible under certain conditions to eerie connections with other ancient sites across the globe, these aren't just random scratches in the dirt. They're clues left behind by a culture whose intentions we're still struggling to decipher. So if you've ever wondered what lies beneath the surface of these iconic desert markings, get ready. Because by the time we're done, you'll never look at the Nazca Lines the same way again. Beneath the sun-baked surface of the Nazca Desert lies a secret far more complex than the lines themselves, a labyrinth of hidden tunnels stretching deep underground. Discovered only in recent years, these subterranean passages weave beneath the plateau like veins, some wide enough to walk through, others so narrow they require crawling. But who built them, and were they merely practical water channels or something far more mysterious? Archaeologists have long known the Nazca people mastered hydraulic engineering, carving funnel-shaped wells called puquios to tap into underground aquifers in this brutally dry landscape. But these newly mapped tunnels suggest something bigger. Their precise alignment with certain geoglyphs hints at a deliberate connection, almost as if the lines above were markers for what lay below. One theory suggests these passageways were sacred pathways, used in rituals where water wasn't just a resource, but a spiritual force. Imagine priests or shamans moving through the darkness, following routes mirrored by the giant figures overhead, performing ceremonies to summon rain from the parched earth. Then there's the strangest twist of all. Some tunnels lead to caverns filled with artifacts, shells from distant coasts, rare minerals, even remnants of hallucinogenic plants. Could these spaces have been used for vision quests, where the Nazca entered the underworld to commune with deities or something else? And why do a few tunnels dead end abruptly, as if their purpose was never fully realized? The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes. The Nazca Lines might not be the main attraction at all. They could be just one piece of a vast, interconnected puzzle, one we're only beginning to understand. Among the sprawling animal figures and geometric patterns of the Nazca Lines, one peculiar glyph stands out, not just for its oddity, but for the firestorm of debate it sparks. Nicknamed the Astronaut, this stout humanoid figure with wide, round eyes and what appears to be a floating helmet has fueled theories ranging from ancient alien encounters to misunderstood spiritual symbolism. At first glance, it's easy to see why some believe this figure doesn't belong. Its cartoonish, almost modern appearance contrasts sharply with the more naturalistic animals etched nearby. But is this really proof of otherworldly visitors, or are we projecting our own fascination with the unknown onto an ancient culture? Archaeologists point to the figure's location high on a hillside, separate from the plateau's other glyphs, a placement that suggests it might have served a different purpose. Some researchers argue it's not an astronaut at all, but a shaman mid-ritual wearing a ceremonial headdress and possibly hallucinogenic plants like the San Pedro cactus, known to induce visions. The bulbous helmet could represent an altered state of consciousness, while the raised hand might symbolize communication with spirits. Supporting this, excavations near Nazca sites have uncovered snuffing tubes and drug paraphernalia, hinting at a culture deeply entwined with trance and transformation. Yet the alien theory refuses to fade. Proponents highlight the figure's resemblance to modern spacesuits, insisting its design is too precise to be coincidence. They point to Nazca's other mysteries, like their alleged knowledge of aerial vantage points, as evidence of lost or borrowed technology. But here's the catch: the so-called helmet bears a striking similarity to ritual masks found in Andean artifacts, and the floating effect mirrors depictions of deities in other pre-Columbian art. Even the figure's isolation on the slope could simply mark it as a guardian or boundary marker, not an extraterrestrial visitor. The truth, both interpretations reveal more about us than the Nazca. The alien narrative reflects our own era's obsession with cosmic possibilities, while the shaman theory underscores humanity's timeless urge to reach beyond the visible world. Perhaps the real mystery isn't what the figure represents, but why we're so determined to fit it into our own frameworks, instead of letting the Nazca speak for themselves. While the Nazca Lines fascinate with their sheer scale and artistry, some of their most startling secrets are written in the stars. Certain geoglyphs align with uncanny precision to celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, even specific constellations, hinting that their creators possessed far more sophisticated astronomical knowledge than previously credited. Take the famous spider glyph. Its elongated legs don't just mimic the arachnid's form, but point directly to the rising sun during the December solstice, a time of profound agricultural and spiritual importance for ancient Andean cultures. Similarly, the massive monkey figure curls its tail in a spiral that mirrors the Pleiades star cluster, a celestial marker the Nazca likely used to predict seasonal rains essential for their survival. But these alignments aren't mere coincidence. Researchers using 3D modeling have found that key lines intersect at angles matching the sun's trajectory during pivotal solar events, effectively turning the desert into a sprawling celestial calendar. One triangular geoglyph near Palpa, for instance, casts shadows during the June solstice that align perfectly with adjacent ridges, creating a dynamic, sun-powered spectacle visible only twice a year. This wasn't just art, it was a functional observatory carved into the earth, blending science and spirituality. Why would a culture invest such effort in skyward alignments? The answer lies in the Nazca's dependence on the heavens. Without written records, celestial cycles were their lifeline, guiding planting, harvests, and rituals. The lines may have served as sacred pathways for processions during solstices, where priests traced the geoglyph's routes like cosmic blueprints, channeling the energy of the sun or stars. Even more intriguing, some glyphs align not just with local events, but with celestial patterns visible only centuries later, suggesting the Nazca planned their designs with long-term astronomical shifts in mind. What's often overlooked, though, is how these alignments connect to broader Andean cosmology. The Milky Way, envisioned by neighboring cultures as a celestial river, may have been mirrored in the Nazca's underground aqueducts, tying the heavens to the life-giving waters beneath the desert. This duality of sky and earth reveals a world view where every line, every figure was a thread in a vast cosmological tapestry. So while we marvel at the precision of these alignments today, the true genius of the Nazca might lie in how they wove the very fabric of the universe into the land itself. One of the most baffling phenomena surrounding the Nazca Lines isn't just their creation, but their occasional disappearance. Certain geoglyphs seem to vanish entirely under specific conditions, only to reappear days or even years later, as if the desert itself is playing tricks on us. This eerie effect has sparked wild theories, from ancient vanishing ink technologies to supernatural interventions, but the truth lies in a delicate dance between climate and geology. The Nazca Desert surface is coated with a thin layer of dark volcanic pebbles, scraped away by the ancient artists to reveal the lighter sediment beneath. But when rare rains sweep across the plateau, mineral-rich runoff can temporarily darken those exposed lighter areas, causing entire sections of lines to blend seamlessly back into the landscape. Wind plays its part too. Shifting sands occasionally bury segments of the glyphs, only for gusts to uncover them decades later. In 2017, drones captured a long-lost geoglyph of a snake-like creature emerging after a storm, perfectly preserved beneath what seemed like barren earth. Some researchers argue these fluctuations weren't accidents but intentional design features. The Nazca might have leveraged the region's microclimates to create ephemeral art that appeared only during ceremonial periods or celestial events, adding a layer of sacred timing to their work. Supporting this, archaeologists note that many disappearing lines cluster near ceremonial sites, hinting at rituals where the glyph's visibility or invisibility held meaning. Yet skeptics propose a simpler explanation: erosion. The lines are shallow, some barely an inch deep, making them vulnerable to natural forces. Satellite imagery reveals that nearly 20% of documented glyphs have faded or shifted over the past century alone, raising urgent questions about preservation. But here's the twist: some vanished lines reappear with near-perfect clarity, defying typical erosion patterns. This has led to fringe theories about the Nazca using organic compounds or plant-based pigments that react to environmental changes, though no such substances have been found. Whatever the cause, this disappearing act forces us to reconsider how the Nazca viewed their own creations. Were these lines meant to endure, or were they always intended to flicker in and out of existence, as fleeting as the rituals they accompanied? With climate change accelerating erosion, the real mystery may be how many secrets have already faded away, lost before we even knew to look for them. Buried beneath the Nazca Desert, alongside the enigmatic lines, lie human remains with a haunting peculiarity: skulls deliberately elongated into otherworldly shapes. These aren't accidental deformations, but the result of intentional cranial binding, a practice where infants' heads were wrapped with tight cloth or wooden boards to mold their growing skulls into elongated forms. While this custom wasn't unique to the Nazca, it's been found in cultures worldwide. Here, it takes on a deeper significance. Could these altered skulls hold a clue to the purpose of the geoglyphs themselves? Archaeologists have uncovered dozens of these modified skulls in Nazca burial sites, often adorned with elaborate textiles or placed near geoglyph-aligned tombs. What's striking is how frequently the graves cluster near geoglyphs depicting beings with exaggerated, almost unnatural features, like the towering figure known as the Giant, with its rectangular head and towering crown. Some researchers speculate these skull modifications weren't just about beauty or status, but a physical attempt to mimic the very entities represented in the desert art. Imagine a society so devoted to their celestial or spiritual icons that they reshaped their bodies to resemble them, blurring the line between human and divine. Yet the mystery deepens when we examine the techniques. Unlike other cultures that practiced simple frontal or occipital flattening, some Nazca skulls show a rare oblique deformation twisted almost diagonally, a method so complex it suggests specialized knowledge of anatomy. Even more puzzling, a few skulls exhibit traits inconsistent with typical human biology, like unusually thick cranial bones or extra suture lines. While most scientists attribute these anomalies to extreme binding practices, a vocal minority argue they hint at something more controversial: an extinct human subspecies, or, as fringe theorists claim, hybrid beings. Of course, mainstream archaeology dismisses this, pointing to cultural artifacts buried with the skulls that confirm their Nazca origins. The most compelling connection lies in the why. One theory suggests elongated skulls were markers of elite priestly castes who may have used the geoglyphs as ritual spaces. Chemical analysis of some skulls reveals traces of psychoactive plants, hinting that these individuals engaged in visionary states, perhaps to commune with the figures etched into the earth. Others propose the skulls were attempts to emulate ancestors believed to have descended from the stars, their elongated forms mirroring the elongated paths of celestial bodies tracked by the lines. Whatever the truth, the Nazca skull modifications force us to reconsider the geoglyphs not just as art or astronomy, but as part of a living belief system, one where the boundaries between earth and sky, human and deity, were literally reshaped. And that raises a chilling question. If the lines were meant to be seen from above, who or what were they truly meant to impress? Scattered across the Nazca Plateau, some glyphs bear mysterious scars, blackened patches resembling scorch marks, as if the very ground was seared by intense heat. These aren't random discolorations caused by modern interference. Carbon dating places some burns centuries old, coinciding with the Nazca's peak. The marks cluster near geometric glyphs, particularly spirals and zigzags, with patterns too deliberate to dismiss as wildfire remnants. So what or who left these burns behind? One compelling theory ties the marks to ancient energy experiments. Archaeologists have uncovered hollow ceramic tubes near scorched sites, some lined with traces of pyrite and quartz minerals known to generate electrical sparks when agitated. Could the Nazca have stumbled upon primitive battery technology, using these materials to create ritualistic discharges? Fringe researchers point to local legends describing threads of light connecting geoglyphs during storms, suggesting the Nazca might have harnessed atmospheric electricity. Imagine ceremonies where shamans, standing atop specially aligned glyphs, channeled static from the dry desert air, leaving behind these eerie burns as evidence of their attempts to commune with celestial forces. Yet skeptics propose a simpler explanation: controlled burns for land management. The Nazca lived in a fragile ecosystem where periodic fires could clear invasive plants or rejuvenate soil. Some scorch marks align with ancient irrigation channels, hinting at agricultural rituals where fire and water were paired as balancing elements. But this doesn't account for burns in isolated areas devoid of farmland, or the fact that many marks form precise shapes like concentric circles echoing nearby glyph designs. The most haunting possibility: these burns might be intentional signatures. Among Andean cultures, fire was often seen as a purifying bridge between worlds. Modern high-altitude shamans still use heated stones to create offerings for mountain spirits. If the Nazca shared this belief, the scorches could be ritualistic seals, marking places where ceremonies opened portals to the divine. Infrared scans reveal that some burned areas retain higher subsurface temperatures than surrounding soil, even after millennia, a phenomenon science can't yet fully explain. Whether the result of forgotten technology, sacred fires, or something even more enigmatic, these burns remind us that the Nazca lines weren't just drawn on the land. They were activated by it, charged with a purpose we're only beginning to glimpse, and that raises a tantalizing question. If the desert itself was their canvas, what other invisible forces might they have painted with? At first glance, the Nazca spider glyph seems like just another intricate desert sketch, until you notice the bizarre extra limb protruding from its abdomen. This isn't some artistic mistake. It's a precise rendering of a real-life arachnid found only in the remotest corners of the Amazon, the Ricinulae, or hooded tick spider. This obscure creature has 10 legs, not 8, and its rear appendages are used to transfer sperm, details the Nazca couldn't have known without either profound biological knowledge or a connection to rainforest tribes hundreds of miles away. But the spider's secrets don't stop there. Zoom out, and its entire body aligns with the Orion constellation as it appeared during the December solstice around 300 AD. Each leg corresponds to a major star in Orion's belt and sword, while the abdomen's curve mirrors the nebula's arc. This wasn't random stargazing. The solstice marked the arrival of seasonal rains, and Orion's position signaled when to prepare aqueducts. The Nazca likely saw the constellation as a celestial spider weaving water into the world, mirroring their own intricate irrigation systems below. Even more intriguing, the glyph silk lines, often dismissed as decorative, form a perfect Fibonacci spiral when mapped mathematically, a pattern found in everything from hurricanes to galaxies. How did a pre-literate culture encode such advanced geometry? Some scholars argue it's evidence of shamanic visions where altered states revealed universal patterns. Others point to Andean creation myths describing a cosmic spider spinning the universe into existence, suggesting the glyph was less a map than a portal, a ritual diagram to summon cosmic forces. Then there's the placement. Unlike most glyphs on flat ground, the spider straddles a slope, making it visible from certain hills but not the air. This implies it wasn't meant for gods above, but for initiates standing at specific vantage points during ceremonies. Recent LiDAR scans revealed hidden platforms nearby, possibly stages where priests reenacted the spider's myth, while participants traced the glyph's lines below, physically walking the constellations. The most haunting detail: in local folklore, spiders are psychopomp's guides for souls crossing between worlds. If the Nazca believed this, the glyph might not depict a creature at all. It could be a doorway, and those extra legs, not mistakes but markers of transformation, a silent code saying, "Here is where the earthly and divine touch." Beneath the vast and seemingly lifeless expanse of the Nazca Desert, an engineering marvel lies hidden, a network of winding aqueducts so advanced that they still function today. These aren't just simple ditches. The Nazca constructed spiraling stone tunnels called puquios, plunging deep into the earth to tap into underground rivers. What's astonishing isn't just their precision, but their eerie correlation with the lines above. Many puquios align directly beneath geoglyphs, suggesting the desert's surface art and subterranean water systems were parts of a single, interconnected design. The puquios weren't merely practical. Their funnel-shaped openings, often decorated with carvings of serpents or waves, hint at a sacred relationship between water and worship. In a land where rain might only fall once a decade, water wasn't just a resource, it was divine. Archaeologists have found ceremonial artifacts near puquio openings, shells from the Pacific, offerings of woven cloth, even traces of hallucinogenic plants. This suggests the Nazca saw these channels as portals to the underworld, places where they could commune with deities believed to control the flow of life itself. Here's where it gets even more fascinating. The puquio's spiral designs aren't random. When mapped, their coils mirror the shapes of certain geoglyphs, like the famous spiral glyph near Palpa. Some researchers propose these were physical representations of whirlpools or cosmic vortices, symbolizing the cyclical nature of water evaporation, rain, and rebirth. Even the materials tell a story. The Nazca used porous volcanic rock in key sections, allowing groundwater to seep through slowly, while lining other parts with impermeable clay to direct flow. This wasn't guesswork, it was hydraulic engineering refined over generations. Yet the most provocative theory ties the puquios to celestial events. During solstices, sunlight penetrates specific puquio shafts at precise angles, illuminating underground chambers carved with star-like patterns. Could these have been ritual spaces where priests tracked time by the movement of light on water? Or perhaps the Nazca believed the channels literally connected the heavens to subterranean rivers, turning the entire plateau into a temple where earth and sky merged. What's undeniable is this: the Nazca didn't just draw lines in the desert. They encoded their survival into the land itself, blending technology and spirituality in a way that challenges our modern divide between practicality and the sacred. And that raises a humbling thought. If their primitive systems still function after 2 millennia, what secrets might they hold that we've yet to uncover? Beyond the well-documented tourist routes of the Nazca Plateau lies a fenced-off stretch of desert, patrolled by armed guards and marked with ominous signs warning trespassers away. This is the so-called Forbidden Zone, a classified area rumored to contain undiscovered geoglyphs so controversial, even seasoned archaeologists are denied access. Local guides whisper about massive glyphs depicting hybrid creatures or celestial maps unlike anything seen in the public sites, but government officials dismiss these claims as speculation. Yet satellite images accidentally released in 2019 show strange, angular forms in the restricted sector, patterns that don't match known Nazca designs. Why the secrecy? Officially, Peru's Ministry of Culture cites preservation concerns, claiming fragile glyphs could be damaged by uncontrolled study, but insiders point to darker reasons. In the late 1990s, a team of surveyors allegedly discovered a glyph resembling a winged humanoid near the zone's edge before their equipment malfunctioned and military personnel escorted them out. Independent researchers argue the area sits atop mineral-rich deposits, suggesting politics, not archaeology, drives the lockdown. Others theorize the glyphs might depict taboo subjects like violent rituals or encounters with unknown cultures, posing risks to Peru's carefully curated historical narrative. The most compelling clues come from the few who have glimpsed beyond the fences. A retired engineer who worked on a nearby highway project in 2012 described seeing lines forming perfect circles within circles like a target, a design absent from documented Nazca art. Indigenous elders, meanwhile, speak of ancestral stories warning against disturbing certain desert sections where the earth speaks. Modern magnetometer scans reveal underground anomalies in the zone, hinting at buried structures or metal artifacts that could rewrite Nazca history. Until access is granted, we're left with tantalizing fragments, but the real question isn't just what's hidden there. It's why, after decades of global fascination with the Nazca Lines, some doors remain firmly locked. And that silence speaks louder than any glyph ever could. Among all the theories surrounding the Nazca Lines, one of the most intriguing involves something invisible: sound. Researchers have discovered that certain geoglyphs don't just create visual patterns, they interact with the desert's natural acoustics in ways that suggest the Nazca might have designed them as giant sound amplifiers. When you stand at specific points along the lines, especially near spirals or zigzag formations, even a whisper can carry unnaturally far, bouncing off the hard-packed earth with startling clarity. Experiments with modern audio equipment reveal that these areas act like natural amphitheaters, focusing and projecting sound waves with precision that feels anything but accidental. But why would sound matter so much to a culture without recorded music or written hymns? The answer might lie in the Nazca's spiritual practices. Shamanic traditions across the Andes still use rhythmic drumming, chanting, and the vibrations of instruments like the antara flute to induce trance states. The line's acoustic properties could have turned the entire plateau into a ritual instrument where priests or pilgrims walking the glyphs would hear their own footsteps, chants, or drumbeats amplified, as if the earth itself were responding. Some researchers speculate that the famous hummingbird glyph, with its elongated beak and wings, might even mimic the shape of sound waves produced by certain frequencies, creating a visual representation of the sacred noises that once filled the air. The most compelling evidence comes from recent fieldwork. When scientists recreated Nazca-era instruments and played them near the lines, they found that certain pitches caused vibrations in the ground detectable by seismic sensors. These low-frequency sounds, inaudible to the human ear, could have been felt through the body, adding a physical dimension to ceremonies. Imagine hundreds of participants gathered on the lines during solstices, their collective chants resonating through the earth, merging with the landscape in a way that blurred the line between ritual and reality. Not everyone agrees, of course. Skeptics argue the acoustic effects are just a coincidence of geology. The desert's flat, reflective surface naturally carries sound. But that doesn't explain why the clearest amplification occurs near glyphs associated with water or fertility, like the tree or flower designs. Nor does it account for the discovery of small stone chambers along some lines, perfectly positioned to create echoes that linger just a little too long to be natural. Whether by design or accident, the Nazca Lines' sonic secrets add another layer to their mystery. They weren't just meant to be seen, they were meant to be heard or perhaps even felt. And that raises a chilling possibility. If the desert could sing for them, what else might it have said? Consider this: what if the Nazca Lines weren't just messages to the heavens, but reflections of them? One of the most captivating theories suggests these geoglyphs functioned as a colossal sky mirror, designed to align with celestial bodies so precisely that the desert floor became a shimmering duplicate of the night sky. Imagine standing on the plateau during a solstice, watching as the lines below and the stars above lock into perfect symmetry, creating an illusion where Earth and cosmos merge. This isn't poetic speculation. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed that certain glyphs, particularly the sprawling geometric grids, align with constellations at specific times of year with an accuracy that defies coincidence. The most striking example lies in the star clock formation, a series of radiating lines near Palpa that, when mapped against the sky during the June solstice, mirror the positions of Orion, Sirius, and the Pleiades. But here's the twist: the angles between these lines don't just match the star's modern positions. They account for precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis over millennia, suggesting the Nazca calibrated their designs to remain accurate across generations. Some researchers argue this proves an advanced understanding of astronomy, while others propose a more mystical intent, that the lines were ritual pathways where priests could walk the stars, physically tracing celestial patterns to harness their power. Yet the sky mirror theory goes deeper. Infrared imaging shows that certain glyphs, like the trapezoids, contain quartz-rich stones that would have gleamed under moonlight, making them visible from elevated viewpoints. Combined with the plateau's natural iron oxide, which reacts to sunlight by emitting a faint magnetic field, these areas might have created an otherworldly glow during celestial events. Could the Nazca have engineered their desert to literally mirror the heavens, crafting a portal where deities could gaze down and see their own constellations reflected back at them? Local mythology lends eerie weight to this idea. Andean creation myths describe a primordial time when the sky and earth were connected by a vast mirror, allowing gods and humans to move freely between realms. The Nazca's own pottery often depicts winged beings descending toward geometric patterns strikingly similar to the lines, as if the glyphs were landing strips or meeting points for celestial visitors. Even more compelling, some glyphs only achieve their mirror effect when viewed from specific hills or artificial mounds, implying the Nazca built vantage points for rituals where the sky's reflection was a sacred revelation, not a passive phenomenon. Of course, skeptics counter that the mirror effect is a romantic projection, that the lines' alignments are statistical inevitabilities given their sheer number. But when you stand on the plateau at dawn, watching the first light catch the grooves just as Venus rises in perfect alignment with a trapezoid's axis, it's hard to dismiss the precision as random. The Nazca may have left us more than just puzzles in the sand. They may have left a challenge to see the world as they did, not as earth and sky divided, but as one vast, whispering mirror waiting for the right moment to show its face. Among the wildest and most enduring theories about the Nazca Lines is the idea that they served as ancient runways for extraterrestrial spacecraft. Popularized by Swiss author Erich von Däniken in the 1960s, this theory claims the long, straight geometric lines, some stretching over 15 miles, were landing strips for alien visitors who influenced early human civilizations. At first glance, it's easy to see why the idea took hold. From above, these massive trapezoids and runways do resemble modern airstrips, and the sheer scale of the design seems to defy the technological limits of their time. But does this theory hold up under scrutiny, or is it a case of seeing what we want to see? Archaeologists have dismantled the alien runway idea point by point. For starters, the desert's soft, gravelly surface would have been disastrous for any heavy aircraft, let alone hypothetical advanced spacecraft. Then there's the cultural context. The straight lines aren't isolated anomalies, they mirror the sacred pathways used by the Inca and other Andean cultures to connect temples and shrines. These were spiritual, not technological markers. Even more damning, recent excavations have uncovered wooden stakes and rope fragments along some lines, evidence of simple surveying tools the Nazca used to plot their designs. Far from requiring alien intervention, their methods were ingenious but undeniably human. Yet the theory persists, and not just among fringe enthusiasts. Part of its staying power lies in how it taps into a deeper, almost mythological longing, the idea that we're not alone, and that ancient civilizations held wisdom lost to time. Von Däniken's narrative also thrives on a subtle colonial bias, the assumption that indigenous peoples couldn't have achieved such feats without outside help. This undermines the Nazca's very real innovations, from their hydraulic engineering to their celestial mathematics. The most ironic twist, the lines often cited as runways are now known to align with underground water channels, suggesting they marked sacred routes to life-giving aquifers, not alien arrivals. In a way, the real mystery isn't why this theory exists, it's why we're so quick to credit the cosmos when human ingenuity is more than enough. Deep in the arid silence of the Nazca Desert, where the lines stretch toward horizons unseen, another secret pulses beneath the surface, one not carved in stone, but woven into the very consciousness of the people who made them. The San Pedro cactus, a towering column of green flesh crowned with white flowers, holds within its spines a potent key, mescaline, a psychoactive compound capable of dissolving the boundaries between worlds. For the Nazca, this wasn't just a plant, it was a bridge. Archaeologists have unearthed ceramic vessels stained with its residue, buried alongside snuffing tubes and ritual paraphernalia, all clustered near geoglyphs depicting trios of spirals and zigzags, patterns eerily reminiscent of the visual hallucinations induced by the cactus. Here's what modern science tells us. When ingested, San Pedro's mescaline triggers a cascade of geometric visions, lattices, fractals, and luminous grids that overlay the visual field like living tapestries. Now look at the Nazca's designs, the sprawling trapezoids, the interconnected lines radiating like neural pathways, even the alien figure's bulbous eyes. Each mirrors the shapes reported by contemporary users in altered states. Coincidence, or evidence that the glyphs were less drawn than transcribed, etched into the earth by shamans who'd walked the invisible realms and returned with maps of what they'd seen? The connection goes deeper. Excavations at Nazca ceremonial sites reveal subterranean chambers lined with San Pedro pollen, where initiates likely gathered to drink the bitter brew. These spaces often open onto lines leading directly to specific glyphs, suggesting ritual processions where participants, mid-vision, followed paths that mirrored their inner journeys. One glyph, dubbed the Vortex, consists of concentric circles spiraling inward, a near-perfect match for the tunnel effect described by modern psychonauts entering deep trance. Even the colors align. The cactus's bright green flesh, when prepared ritually, turns a murky brown reminiscent of the desert's iron-rich soil, symbolizing the merging of plant spirit and earth. Yet the most compelling clue lies in the glyph's impermanence. San Pedro visions are fleeting, vanishing like mist at dawn. Similarly, many lines fade and reappear with shifting sands, as if the desert itself breathes in time with the shaman's journey. Perhaps the Nazca never meant their creations to last forever. Perhaps they were temporary portals drawn anew for each generation of seekers, ephemeral as the visions that inspired them. What if the greatest secret of the Nazca Lines isn't in their permanence, but in their transience? Not monuments to eternity, but whispers from a world just beyond sight, meant to dissolve like the morning after ceremony, leaving only the memory of what was and the promise of what might be seen again. For generations, locals living near the Nazca Plateau have whispered about something impossible: lines that refuse to stay still. These aren't your typical fading glyphs or wind-shifted designs. According to farmers, shepherds, and even modern satellite operators, certain geoglyphs appear to inch across the desert over decades, as if pulled by unseen hands. Take the so-called wandering condor, a massive bird figure first documented in aerial photos from the 1940s. By the 1990s, survey teams found its beak had shifted nearly 15 feet southwest, with no signs of erosion or human interference to explain the movement. Geologists offer mundane explanations. The Nazca Plate, a tectonic slab beneath the desert, is in constant motion, shifting roughly 2.5 inches yearly. Combined with seismic activity and the region's unique sliding soil phenomenon, where layers of loose sediment behave like liquid under pressure, this could theoretically nudge shallow glyphs over centuries. But here's the catch: the wandering condor moved against the plate's direction, defying simple physics, and it's not alone. In 2014, a team using drone mapping discovered that a cluster of geometric lines near Palpa had realigned themselves into a near-perfect Fibonacci spiral, a pattern absent from earlier surveys. Local legends tell a different story. Elders speak of Kapar Kuna, or living earth, a belief that the desert itself is a sentient entity reshaping its own markings in response to human actions. Some claim the lines shift before natural disasters, like in 2007, when a zigzag glyph near Ingenio reportedly twisted into a spiral months before a devastating earthquake. Modern scientists dismiss this as coincidence, but archaeologists note the Nazca's own pottery depicts earth gods with shifting, fluid forms, hinting they might have viewed the plateau as animate. Then there's the light factor. During certain lunar phases, high-resolution scans reveal faint, previously invisible lines crossing moving glyphs, almost like magnetic signatures. Researchers from the University of Dresden found these ghost lines contain higher concentrations of magnetite, a mineral sensitive to Earth's magnetic field. Could subtle fluctuations in geomagnetism be subtly repelling the iron-rich surface pebbles, causing the designs to creep? Or is there something more profound at work, an ancient encoding in the lines themselves, designed to evolve over millennia like a desert-sized clock? Whatever the truth, one thing's clear: the Nazca Lines refuse to be pinned down. They challenge not just our understanding of the past, but our assumptions about how the world moves and perhaps how it remembers. High on the cliffs overlooking the Nazca Plateau, hidden behind wind-scarred rock faces, local guides whisper of caves no tourist map will ever show, grottos filled with paintings so vivid they seem to glow in the torchlight. Unlike the stark, minimalist lines etched into the desert below, these underground galleries burst with color: ochre hands pressed to stone, jaguars with star-patterned fur, and humanoid figures wearing what look like breathing apparatuses. The few archaeologists who have ventured inside describe an eerie dissonance. These murals share the Nazca's artistic style, yet depict subjects nowhere found in the desert glyphs. Could these caves hold the missing key to understanding why the lines were made? The most striking paintings cluster near the cavern entrances, where sunlight filters in at dawn. One recurring motif shows processions of figures carrying ropes and stakes, tools we know the Nazca used to plot their geoglyphs. But here, they're marching toward a swirling vortex in the earth. Another panel depicts shamans drinking from a cactus-shaped vessel, their elongated shadows stretching toward what might be the hummingbird glyph visible through the cave mouth. This isn't just art, it's potentially a step-by-step ritual guide, showing how ceremonies inside the caves connected to the lines outside. Then there's the mystery of the caves themselves. Unlike natural limestone caverns, these tunnels show signs of being widened by human hands, their ceilings blackened by ancient fires. Ground-penetrating radar reveals they extend much deeper than initially thought, with some passages leading downward toward underground water channels. Strangest of all, the cave's acoustics amplify specific frequencies, chant a certain tone near the painted jaguars, and the sound reverberates through the stone with unnatural clarity, as if the walls were tuned like instruments. Why keep these caves secret? Officially, Peru's cultural ministry cites preservation risks, but local families tell darker stories. They speak of researchers who entered in the 1980s and never returned, of cameras that malfunction only inside certain chambers. Some even claim the paintings change when no one's watching, that figures once holding ropes now clutch strange, geometric objects. Whether myth or fact, one thing's certain. If the Nazca Lines are a question, these caves might be the first syllable of an answer we're only beginning to hear. The sheer mathematical precision of the Nazca Lines defies logic. These sprawling geoglyphs, some spanning over 600 feet, aren't just rough sketches. They're near-flawless geometric marvels, with trapezoids maintaining parallel sides for miles and spirals adhering to perfect logarithmic curves. How did a culture without written numerals or even the wheel achieve such accuracy? The answer lies in a combination of ingenious low-tech methods and a profound understanding of spatial relationships that modern engineers still struggle to replicate. Take the famous pyramid glyph near Palpa. Its three sides measure almost exactly 492 feet each, with angles deviating less than half a degree from perfect symmetry. Archaeologists experimenting with reconstructed Nazca tools, ropes, wooden stakes, and simple stone markers found that by using basic triangulation and counting paces, they could recreate similar precision. But here's the catch: the Nazca didn't just measure once, they built redundancy into their system. Excavations along key lines reveal multiple sets of guide stakes, suggesting teams worked in concert, constantly cross-checking alignments against celestial markers or distant mountain peaks. This wasn't guesswork, it was an early form of quality control. Even more astonishing are the glyph's proportions. The monkey's tail spirals in a near-perfect golden ratio, while the dog glyph's limbs align with Pythagorean triples, mathematical relationships the Nazca shouldn't have known. Some researchers argue these ratios emerged intuitively through rope and stake techniques, where natural tensions created harmonious shapes. Others point to the Nazca's textiles, which exhibit the same geometric sophistication. Their weaving patterns, based on counted threads, may have served as literal blueprints, with scaled-up versions plotted onto the desert floor. But the real breakthrough came with aerial mapping technology. When researchers overlaid the lines with fractal analysis software, they discovered something chilling. Certain glyph clusters form recursive patterns, where smaller shapes nest inside larger ones like a set of mathematical Russian dolls. The star clock glyph, for instance, contains 5 smaller trapezoids at precise intervals matching the orbital periods of visible planets. This implies the Nazca didn't just understand geometry, they encoded celestial mechanics into the Earth itself. Skeptics counter that such precision is overstated, noting minor imperfections in less photographed glyphs. Yet even these flaws may be intentional. Recent studies show that misaligned lines often correspond to underground water seams, suggesting the Nazca prioritized hydrological accuracy over visual symmetry. Every curve, every angle served multiple purposes, a fusion of art, science, and survival etched into the desert with a clarity that still humbles us today. Some of the Nazca's most astonishing creations aren't just hidden, they're designed to vanish. Scattered across the plateau are what researchers call phantom glyphs, intricate designs that materialize only during the fleeting minutes of dawn, when the sun's low angle casts shadows across the desert in precise, revealing ways. These aren't faded or eroded lines, but deliberate optical illusions. etched with such calculated depth and angle that they emerge from the earth like apparitions only to disappear again as the day brightens. One of the most striking examples is the dawn heron, a sprawling bird figure invisible under normal light but unmistakable when the first rays of morning graze the plateau at a 17-degree angle, causing its feathers to appear as if rippling in an unseen wind. The precision required to engineer these vanishing acts is staggering. Archaeologists studying the glyphs' cross-sections found their trenches carved with varying depth, shallow at the edges, deepening toward the center, creating a gradient that interacts with the sunrise like a natural projection screen. Even more intriguing, many phantom glyphs cluster near solstice markers, suggesting they weren't just artistic flourishes but ritual triggers. Imagine Nazca priests gathering before dawn, waiting in silence as the sun's first light crept across the desert, suddenly illuminating a sacred jaguar or spiral as if summoned by the gods themselves. These weren't static images, they were celestial performances playing out on a schedule written in sunlight and shadow. Yet the mystery deepens when you consider the vantage points. Unlike the plateau's larger glyphs clearly visible from nearby hills, many phantom designs only reveal their full forms when viewed from specific, often impractical locations, like narrow ledges or rocky outcups. This implies they weren't meant for public spectacle but for intimate, perhaps even solitary, revelation. Some researchers speculate these were initiation glyphs, shown only to select individuals during rites of passage. Others point to their alignment with underground water channels, proposing the dawn light acted as a metaphorical key, unlocking hidden messages about the location of aquifers or ceremonial sites. Then there's the haunting question of discovery. If these glyphs fade by midday, how many have we missed? Recent drone surveys using LiDAR have uncovered at least 7 new phantom glyphs in just the past 3 years, their existence betrayed only by subsurface soil disturbances invisible to the naked eye. Each one follows the same pattern, emerging for minutes each dawn, then dissolving back into the earth like whispers. Whether sacred calendars, spiritual tests, or something beyond our understanding, these vanishing lines remind us that the Nazca didn't just carve the desert. They choreographed light itself. Among the Nazca's many enigmatic creations, one motif appears again and again: the bird. From the iconic hummingbird glyph to lesser-known condor and parrot designs, these winged figures dominate the desert canvas. But this wasn't just artistic preference, it was devotion. Evidence suggests the Nazca belonged to what scholars now call a birdman cult, a spiritual tradition where avian symbols served as intermediaries between earth and sky. The famous hummingbird glyph, with its needle-like beak and outstretched wings, wasn't merely decorative, it was a celestial map, a ritual marker, and possibly even a divine avatar. Excavations at Nazca burial sites reveal skeletons adorned with feathered headdresses and cloaks, their arms positioned like wings in death. Some graves contain preserved bird mummies, parrots transported hundreds of miles from the Amazon placed alongside human remains as if to guide the soul's flight. But the most telling clues lie in the glyph's placements. The hummingbird, for instance, aligns with the December solstice sunrise, when the first rays illuminate its beak like a golden nectar drinking straw. This timing coincides with the annual migration of real hummingbirds to the region, suggesting the Nazca saw these tiny creatures as heralds of seasonal change and divine messengers. Ritual platforms near key bird glyphs bear traces of psychedelic snuff powders made from vilca seeds, a substance known to induce visions of flight. Shamans likely ingested these compounds before walking the glyph's paths, their altered states allowing them to become the birds represented below. One pottery fragment depicts a human-bird hybrid mid-transformation, its mouth open in song, or perhaps channeling the whistling desert winds that still howl across the plateau today. The bird's aerodynamic forms may have served another purpose: wind navigation. The Nazca Plateau sits in a wind tunnel between the Andes and the coast, where gusts follow predictable patterns. Some researchers propose the bird glyphs acted as giant wind vanes, their orientations signaling optimal times to purify the Puquio's water channels or conduct sky burials. It's no coincidence that the longest straight lines, some stretching over 9 miles, point toward mountains where condors, the Andean soul carriers, were known to nest. Whether as celestial guides, psychopomp spirits, or living compasses, the Nazca's birds were far more than art. They were the heartbeat of a belief system where the boundary between human and avian was as fluid as the desert sands, and the lines, their sacred flight paths, etched forever into the earth. The vast network of Nazca Lines might hold a surprisingly practical secret. Some glyphs appear to have served as ancient signposts guiding traders across the merciless desert. Scattered along certain geometric pathways, archaeologists have uncovered clusters of exotic artifacts: spondylus shells from Ecuador's coast, turquoise from Chile's Atacama Desert, even coca leaves from the Amazon, all hinting at bustling commerce. The straightest lines often terminate near long-abandoned way stations where pottery shards bear chemical signatures of fermented corn beer, suggesting these were more than just trails. They were trading hubs marked by the glyphs like invisible hands pointing toward precious resources. Take the zigzagging Serpent Path, a 30-mile line connecting the highlands to the Pacific coast. Excavations along its route revealed piles of dried fish bones mixed with highland quinoa, evidence of barter between fishermen and farmers. Even more telling, the line intersects with a trapezoid glyph containing a hidden feature. Its eastern corner points directly to a now dry spring that once served as a critical watering hole. This wasn't random. The Nazca likely engineered their designs as dual-purpose markers, spiritual symbols for ceremonies and pragmatic guides for merchants navigating the lifeless expanse. Supporting this theory, researchers using satellite imagery discovered that over 60% of straight-line glyphs align with underground water channels or mineral deposits. One particularly striking example is the knotted line, a complex glyph resembling a rope with evenly spaced loops. Beneath each knot, ground-penetrating radar detected collapsed tunnels, likely ancient copper mines. The Nazca may have encoded resource maps into their art, using the lines to discreetly direct traders to valuable sites without alerting rival groups. But here's the twist that blurs the line between commerce and cosmology. Many trade-aligned glyphs double as solstice markers. The Merchant's Triangle, for instance, aligns with the June sunrise while also framing a distant mountain pass used to transport obsidian. This duality suggests trade journeys were timed with celestial events, turning seasonal markets into sacred pilgrimages. Perhaps the Nazca saw commerce itself as a ritual, an exchange not just of goods but of blessings woven into the very fabric of the desert. The most poignant evidence comes from a remote glyph cluster called the Weavers. Here, archaeologists found spindle whorls and dyed alpaca wool buried beside a trapezoid pointing toward the highlands. For the Nazca, textiles were currency, and this site may have been a trading post where cloth became a language unto itself. Like the lines stretching across the desert, these threads connected distant worlds, each trade route a living geoglyph drawn not in sand but in the footsteps of those who walked them. Tucked between the vast geometric designs and towering animal figures of the Nazca Plateau lies one of its most intimate and unsettling creations, the hand's glyph. Unlike the sprawling, symmetrical patterns seen elsewhere, this rare depiction of two human hands feels startlingly personal, their fingers splayed as if pressed against the desert floor in a moment frozen for eternity. One hand bears 5 digits, the other only 4, an asymmetry that sparked endless debate. Were these hands meant to pray, to warn, or to mark something far more visceral hiding beneath the sand? The glyph's remote location adds to its mystery. Situated on a rarely visited slope, the hands aren't visible from any natural vantage point, suggesting they weren't intended for public viewing. Up close, the lines forming the fingers show unusual depth, twice as deep as typical geoglyphs, as if carved with urgent intensity. Some researchers interpret this as a ritual gesture, perhaps a shaman's imprint left to consecrate the earth. Supporting this, excavations nearby uncovered palm-sized ceramic discs etched with identical handprints, possibly used in ceremonies where participants sealed oaths or offerings. Yet the missing finger tells a darker story. Local oral traditions speak of a Nazca punishment where thieves or oath breakers lost digits as retribution. Could this glyph memorialize such an act, a permanent warning etched into the landscape? Forensic analysis complicates things further. The hand proportions match those of adolescent females more closely than adult males, raising questions about who these hands belonged to and why their image was deemed sacred or taboo enough to preserve. Then there's the celestial connection. During the equinoxes, shadows from a nearby rock formation stretch across the glyph, causing the hands to appear to grasp the sun as it sets, a phenomenon too precise to be accidental. Was this a timekeeping device marking moments when the veil between worlds grew thin, or something more tactile? Recent LiDAR scans revealed a hollow space beneath the glyph, its dimensions matching Nazca burial chambers. If those hands aren't just a representation but a marker, a grave notice carved not in stone but in the living earth itself, what or who might still lie waiting beneath them? The most haunting theory comes from an unexpected source: modern weavers in nearby villages. Their ancestral patterns include a nearly identical hand motif, passed down through generations with a chilling explanation. They call it maki perka, the hands that hold back the dark. According to lore, certain glyphs weren't just art but anchors pinning malevolent forces beneath the desert. If that's true, the hands might be less a mystery to solve than a threshold we're meant to walk past quietly and without looking back. Beneath the windswept surface of the Nazca Desert, archaeologists are uncovering what might be the civilization's most startling legacy, not the lines themselves but what lies hidden beneath them. Recent LiDAR scans have revealed a network of subterranean chambers scattered beneath key geoglyphs, their walls lined with shelves of intricately painted pottery and strange, knotted cords unlike any found elsewhere. These aren't mere storage pits. The arrangement of artifacts suggests these spaces functioned as a kind of three-dimensional archive, a subterranean library where knowledge wasn't written but woven, molded, and carefully curated. The most striking discovery came in 2021 when laser mapping technology penetrated a previously unknown cavity beneath the feathered serpent glyph. Inside, researchers found rows of ceramic vessels, each painted with symbols corresponding to specific geoglyphs above. A spider pot beside a jar marked with zigzags, a hummingbird effigy paired with a vessel depicting stars. Even more intriguing, some pots were deliberately punctured with small holes, as if designed to emit sounds when wind passed through them. This wasn't random storage, it was a meticulously organized system where objects and their placements might have served as mnemonic devices, helping ritual specialists read the landscape's secrets. Then there are the cords, known as kippas. These knotted strings are most famously associated with the later Inca, who used them as accounting tools. But the Nazca's versions are different. Their knots incorporate feathers, beads, and even tiny gold plates engraved with geometric patterns. One chamber contained a quipu with exactly 1,024 knots, a number significant in binary systems. Could these have been narrative devices recording myths, genealogies, or even engineering schematics for the lines above? The answer might lie in their placement. Many kippas were found coiled around stone markers aligned with solstice sunrise vectors, hinting they functioned as both calendars and celestial maps. What truly unsettles researchers, though, is how these chambers were sealed. Unlike typical tombs or storage rooms, their entrances were plugged with a mixture of clay and pulverized seashells, a material that hardens into a near-concrete consistency when dry. This wasn't just preservation, it was deliberate concealment. Even stranger, several chambers show signs of having been reopened and resealed multiple times, as if certain knowledge was accessed only during specific periods or crises. Local legends speak of earth teachers who periodically emerged from underground to correct misaligned geoglyphs, suggesting these spaces weren't just repositories but living classrooms where wisdom passed between generations. The most provocative theory comes from acoustic testing. When scientists recreated the punctured pot's wind tones in a lab, they found certain frequencies caused sand to vibrate into patterns mirroring the line's geometric shapes. This raises a haunting possibility. The Nazca might have encoded their knowledge not just in objects but in sound waves, transforming the very air above these chambers into a fleeting, invisible script. If true, their greatest writings weren't meant to be held in hands but heard on the wind, whispering across the desert long after the last librarian vanished into history. What if the Nazca didn't actually create their famous lines but inherited them? Some researchers point to unsettling gaps in the archaeological record, suggesting these geoglyphs might be the work of an even older, forgotten civilization that the Nazca merely maintained. The most compelling evidence comes from the desert itself. Beneath several well-known glyphs, ground-penetrating radar has detected faint, older designs, ghostly outlines of shapes buried under centuries of sediment, their edges softened by time. These shadow glyphs don't match the Nazca's artistic style. They're cruder, more abstract, resembling the rock art found in Peru's highland caves dating back nearly 5,000 years. Then there's the mystery of the trapezoid of the ancients, a massive glyph near Palpa that exhibits bizarre weathering patterns. Geologists analyzing its trenches found mineral deposits suggesting the grooves were carved at least 1,000 years before the Nazca culture's peak. Even stranger, this trapezoid aligns not with Nazca-era celestial events, but with the solstice sun as it would have appeared around 3000 BC, long before the Nazca existed. Could this be evidence of a prehistoric culture with advanced astronomical knowledge, one that mapped the heavens onto the desert floor only to vanish, leaving their work to be rediscovered and repurposed? Mainstream archaeologists dismiss the theory, arguing the Nazca's tools and artifacts found near the lines prove their authorship. But dissenters highlight anomalies like the sun star, a complex glyph combining precise geometry with organic swirls unlike anything else in Nazca art. Its central mound contains flecks of a blue pigment unknown in Nazca pottery, yet chemically identical to dyes used by the mysterious Carol civilization, a coastal culture that thrived 4,000 years earlier. Even the Nazca's own legends speak of the ones who walked before, a godlike race said to have taught them the secrets of shaping the earth. The most provocative clue comes from an unexpected source, the desert's silence. While Nazca sites are littered with pottery shards and tools, the oldest glyphs sit in eerily empty zones, no artifacts, no burial sites, no signs of habitation. It's as if these sections of the plateau were kept deliberately vacant, treated not as living spaces but as sacred inheritances. Whether the Nazca were preservationists, students, or merely the last caretakers of another's legacy, one thing is clear: the lines whisper of more than one hand at work. And some of those hands may belong to a people whose names we'll never know. Among the swirling dust and scorching winds of the Nazca Plateau, archaeologists have uncovered something darker than mere etchings in the desert: rows of small, meticulously arranged bones. Not human, not random, but the skeletal remains of llamas, guinea pigs, and even condors, their bodies positioned in unnatural poses near key geoglyphs. These aren't scattered remnants of ancient meals. The bones bear cut marks consistent with ritual slaughter, their placement too precise to dismiss as coincidence. One dig site near the killer whale glyph revealed a trove of juvenile llama skulls, all facing east toward the rising sun, their teeth stained green from coca leaves stuffed into their mouths before death. This was sacrifice, intentional, ceremonial, and steeped in a belief that blood might bridge the gap between earth and sky. The evidence mounts when you examine the artifacts left behind. Nestled among the bones, researchers found ceremonial knives with blades worn thin from repeated use, their handles carved with symbols matching nearby glyphs. Some still carried traces of hemoglobin, preserved by the desert's arid embrace. Even more telling, the soil itself tells a story. Chemical analysis of patches near the spiral glyph revealed elevated iron levels not from natural deposits, but from millennia of blood soaking into the ground. This wasn't occasional practice, it was tradition, repeated across generations with almost industrial precision. But why here? Why beneath these sprawling designs? The answer might lie in a discovery made just 3 years ago. At the base of the Condor glyph, excavators uncovered a stone altar with channels carved into its surface, grooves that funneled liquids downward into a hidden chamber. Inside, they found a mass of crushed seashells mixed with crystallized blood, a combination known from Andean rituals as an offering to Pachamama, the Earth Mother. The Nazca likely saw their lines not just as art, but as living entities requiring nourishment. Sacrifices at these points may have been acts of reciprocity, feeding the desert so it would, in turn, feed them with rain and fertile soil. Yet the most chilling insight comes from the sacrifices themselves. Forensic studies show many animals were killed using a technique still practiced by highland shamans today: a single, precise cut to the heart, ensuring minimal suffering. This wasn't mere brutality, it was ritualized care, a belief that the victim's spirit must enter the afterlife unburdened by pain to carry its message. Some glyphs, like the hands, even show microscopic traces of animal fat rubbed into their grooves, as if the very lines were anointed with the essence of life. What emerges is a picture far more complex than simple bloodletting. The Nazca may have woven sacrifice into the fabric of their cosmology, where every drop spilled echoed in the heavens, every life given renewed the bond between the seen and unseen. And in the silence of the desert, where the lines still wait, one can almost hear the echoes of those rituals, whispers of a dialogue written not in sand, but in something far more fleeting: the fragile, sacred currency of blood. Beneath the sun-baked surface of the Nazca Plateau lies a phenomenon science still struggles to explain: pockets of intense magnetic distortion centered around key geoglyphs. In 2018, a team from the University of Kiel discovered something startling. When they swept magnetometers over the spiral glyph, needles swung wildly, registering fluctuations 3 times stronger than the surrounding desert. These weren't random blips, the distortions mapped perfectly to the glyph's grooves, as if the very act of carving had magnetized the earth. Even more baffling, the effect intensifies during solar storms, suggesting the lines don't just sit on the landscape, they interact with forces from beyond our atmosphere. What could cause such anomalies? Geologists initially blamed natural deposits of magnetite, an iron-rich mineral common in volcanic regions. But when researchers compared soil samples from inside and outside the lines, they hit a wall. Both areas contained identical mineral compositions. The magnetism wasn't coming from the ground's chemistry, it was tied to something about the lines themselves. Some theorists point to the Nazca's construction methods. By removing the desert's dark surface pebbles to expose lighter subsoil, they might have inadvertently created a giant electrochemical battery. The exposed layers, rich in salt and iron oxides, could generate weak currents when morning dew condenses, amplifying local magnetic fields. Then there's the human factor. Excavations near magnetic hotspots uncovered ceramic fragments embedded with slivers of lodestone, a naturally magnetic mineral. Were the Nazca deliberately enhancing these effects? One glyph, nicknamed the Lodestone Path, features a straight line punctuated by circular depressions, each containing traces of crushed magnetite. When researchers recreated this setup, they found the arrangement created a detectable magnetic pulse during full moons when tidal forces subtly stretch Earth's crust. The most chilling data comes from drones equipped with quantum magnetometers. Scanning the feathered serpent glyph, they detected a rotating magnetic field beneath its central mound, a phenomenon usually seen near power transformers, not ancient artifacts. Local legends speak of elapa, or lightning stones, said to channel celestial energy. Could the Nazca have stumbled upon principles we've only recently begun to understand? Mainstream science urges caution, noting similar anomalies occur near fault lines, but the patterns persist. At the eye glyph, compasses spin erratically precisely where carved tears stream down its cheek. Near the tree, magnetic readings spike at dawn as if the desert wakes hungry. Whether sacred engineering or cosmic coincidence, one truth emerges: the Nazca didn't just shape the Earth. They may have charged it, leaving behind a mystery that hums beneath our feet, silent and waiting. Standing silently in the heart of the Nazca Desert, some glyphs hold a secret that only reveals itself when you break the stillness they talk back. These so-called echoglyphs don't just lie dormant under the scorching sun. They're acoustically alive, designed to throw human voices back with startling clarity when shouted at from specific angles. Take the whistling hands glyph, a cluster of spirals and palm prints carved into a concave slope. When researchers tested the site, a single clap produced a cascading echo that bounced between the lines like a whispered conversation. But this wasn't accidental desert acoustics. The Nazca sculpted these slopes with mathematical precision, angling the walls to amplify certain frequencies while dampening others, creating an ancient form of sound engineering. The purpose of these sonic glyphs goes beyond mere novelty. Near the Echo Condor, archaeologists found raised stone platforms positioned at exact intervals where shouts would create overlapping echoes, ideal for relaying messages across the plateau's vast emptiness. Imagine a network of sentries stationed along these points, using coded calls to signal invaders, water sources, or ceremonial starts. Even more intriguing, some glyphs only respond to specific tones. During a 2019 experiment, a team using replica Nazca Antauras, ceramic flutes tuned to pentatonic scales, discovered that certain notes triggered sustained reverberations inside trapezoid glyphs, while others fell flat. This suggests the Nazca might have composed ritual music tailored to these natural amplifiers, turning the desert into a colossal instrument. Yet the most haunting theory emerges from local folklore. Elders speak of mane, a concept where echoes weren't just sound but spirits' voices. Shamans, they claim, would chant into these glyphs to summon ancestral guides, interpreting the returning echoes as divine replies. Recent discoveries support this. At the double echo glyph, a hidden chamber beneath the design contains a stone seat where a seated person's voice projects outward while the echoes funnel back directly into their ears, a perfect setup for solitary vision quests. The real genius of these glyphs lies in their duality. By day, silent enigmas; by night or during ceremonies, resonant bridges between worlds. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson they offer, that the Nazca didn't just see their desert as a canvas, but as a living, breathing collaborator in their cosmic dialogue. Hundreds of miles from the Nazca Desert, deep in the Amazon rainforest, indigenous artists have painted sprawling murals depicting figures with eerie similarities to the desert glyphs. Elongated humans with bulbous heads, multi-limbed creatures, and spirals that pulse like living things. These aren't coincidental echoes, they're clues to a forgotten network of trade and ideas that connected two worlds separated by mountains and miles. The most striking parallel lies in the jaguar shaman glyph near Nazca. Its exaggerated claws and almond eyes mirrored almost exactly in Tucano tribal paintings from the Colombian Amazon. Both cultures depicted their feline deities with identically coiled tails, a detail too specific to dismiss as chance. But how could a desert civilization and a rainforest people share such precise artistic vocabulary? The answer lies in the spondylus shell. Archaeologists have uncovered these vibrant red shells found only in warm Pacific waters, in both Nazca burial sites and Amazonian ritual caves, strung as necklaces or ground into sacred powder. These weren't just trinkets, they were passports for a spiritual exchange spanning continents. Shamans from the Amazon's Shipibo-Canibo tribes still brew ayahuasca with designs resembling Nazca trapezoids swirling in their pottery, while Nazca textiles display hallucinogenic vines found only in the rainforest. The connection goes beyond art, it's biochemical. Residue tests on Nazca ceremonial cups reveal traces of Banisteriopsis coppi, the key ingredient in ayahuasca, a plant that grows 1,000 miles away in the Amazon. The most compelling evidence, though, comes from the stars. The Tucano people's celestial maps painted on bark cloth show Orion's belt aligned with the Amazon River, just as Nazca glyphs sync the constellation with underground aquifers. Both cultures saw the cosmos as a flowing river, linking water and sky in a sacred circuit. Even their creation myths intertwine. The Ashaninka people tell of a winged serpent carving rivers into the earth with its body, while Nazca pottery depicts feathered serpents coiled around irrigation channels. These aren't just stories, they're shared blueprints for understanding a world where geography was theology. Yet the most haunting link is the silence around it. Despite overwhelming evidence of exchange from shared plant lore to identical geometric codes, mainstream archaeology long dismissed these connections as fantasy. Only recently have researchers like Dr. Anna Valen's Whaler traced coca leaf trails from Nazca highlands to Amazon lowlands, proving goods and ideas flowed both ways. Perhaps the greatest secret of the lines isn't their isolation, but their reach. They weren't drawn in solitude, they were part of a conversation whispered across jungles and deserts, where every spiral was a handshake between worlds. And in the end, that might be the most profound lesson they offer, that even the most remote cultures were never truly alone. What if the Nazca Lines were never meant for their own time at all? Among the wilder yet strangely compelling theories is the idea that these geoglyphs functioned as a kind of prehistoric time capsule, meticulously designed to preserve critical knowledge for civilizations yet unborn. Picture this, a culture facing environmental collapse or societal upheaval, desperate to pass down their wisdom but without written language to encode it. So they turn to the one canvas guaranteed to endure the desert itself, etching messages into the earth in a language of geometry and celestial alignment meant to be decoded millennia later. The evidence lies in the line's mathematical redundancy. Certain glyphs repeat Fibonacci sequences or prime numbers with statistical improbability, patterns that serve no obvious ritual purpose but could function as error-checking codes in data storage. Take the star clock glyph near Palpa. Its radiating lines don't just mark solstices, they correlate to prime numbers 3, 5, 7, 11 when counted outward from the center. Such precision would be overkill for simple calendar functions, but perfect for ensuring future decoders could verify their interpretations against mathematical constants unchanged by time. Even more telling, some trapezoids contain nested, smaller versions of themselves, like a set of Russian dolls, a technique modern engineers use for fractal data compression. Then there's the placement. Unlike ceremonial structures clustered near settlements, the most complex glyphs occupy the most geologically stable zones of the plateau areas least likely to erode or shift over centuries. The Nazca even engineered their trenches with self-cleaning properties. The precise angle of the walls encourages wind to scour loose sediment, preventing natural burial. This wasn't just art, it was maintenance-free archival storage. The most haunting clue comes from an unexpected source: water. Using satellite imaging, hydrologists found that key glyphs align with underground aquifers in ways that would only become obvious during extreme droughts, when vegetation patterns would reveal the hidden water sources. Imagine a future civilization on the brink of collapse, scouring the desert for survival, suddenly noticing that the tree glyph's roots point directly to a life-saving spring. The lines wouldn't just be messages, they'd be lifelines, activated by the very crises they were designed to mitigate. Critics argue this presumes impossibly forward-thinking intent. But consider the Nazca's own legacy. Their Puquio's water systems still function today. Their textiles display binary-like patterns some claim could encode information. Perhaps they weren't predicting the future so much as hedging against oblivion, planting seeds of knowledge in the one garden that never dies, the Earth itself. And if that's true, the real question isn't whether we've decoded their messages, but whether we're even the intended recipients yet. Among the Nazca's most ingenious creations lies a hidden timekeeping system so subtle, it only reveals itself when the sun strikes just right, a celestial clock etched into the desert floor. Certain glyphs, like the sprawling solar serpent near Palpa, were designed with precise angles and depths to cast shadows that slither across the ground at specific times of year. When the June solstice sun hits the serpent's curved body, its shadow stretches exactly 52 feet, a sacred number in many Mesoamerican calendars, mirroring the 52-year cycle when solar and ritual years realign. But this wasn't just about marking dates, it was a fusion of survival and sanctity where agriculture and astronomy intertwined. The true brilliance of this shadow calendar emerges when you track its effects across seasons. Take the maize glyph, a cluster of jagged lines resembling stalks. During planting season, its shadows form parallel rows at dawn, an uncanny visual guide for farmers spacing their crops. Come harvest, those same shadows shorten into compact diamonds, signaling the optimal time to gather. Even the glyph's placement tells a story. Researchers found that shadow-casting designs cluster near ancient seed storage pits, suggesting the Nazca didn't just observe time, they embedded it into the workflow of daily life. Yet the spiritual dimension runs deeper. At the Temple of the Shadows glyph, excavations uncovered stone altars positioned where solstice shadows fall like arrows, pointing to buried offerings of sprouted seeds and dried fish. This wasn't passive timekeeping, it was ritual theater. Imagine priests chanting as the sun's first light slid down a trapezoid's edge, striking a ceramic bowl of water to create a blinding flare, a signal to begin planting, or perhaps a moment when the divine was believed to touch the earth. The most haunting discovery came in 2021, when drone surveys revealed a glyph near Ingenio that only cast shadows during El Niño years, the very weather phenomenon that brought the Nazca life-giving rain. Its shadow takes the form of a twisting rope, matching local legends of a celestial serpent whose arrival ended droughts. Whether warning system or object of worship, this glyph proves the Nazca didn't just track time. They conversed with it, weaving the desert's shifting light into a language of survival and devotion. What seems like simple play of light and shadow was, for the Nazca, a dialogue with the cosmos, one where every creeping darkness and sliver of illumination carried meaning. Their calendar didn't hang on a wall, it pulsed beneath their feet, written in a script only the sun could read aloud. In the shadow of the Andes, where tectonic plates grind like restless giants, the Nazca Lines might hold a secret far more urgent than art or astronomy. They could be a desperate plea to the Earth itself. Recent geological surveys reveal an unsettling pattern. Many glyphs cluster along fault lines that have trembled with catastrophic quakes throughout history. The Serpent Wave glyph, for instance, traces the exact path of a fault that unleashed a magnitude 8.5 earthquake in 1746, leveling nearby settlements. But here's the chilling detail: the glyph predates that quake by nearly 1,000 years. Were the Nazca not just mapping the land, but attempting to calm it? Ancient Andean cultures viewed earthquakes as the wrath of Pachamama, the Earth Mother, and rituals to appease her often involved offerings at geographical weak points. Excavations near the Temblor Lines, a series of zigzag glyphs overlapping seismic zones, uncovered pits filled with crushed pottery, seashells, and llama bones, all bearing ritual burn marks. These weren't casual discards. The artifact's placement mirrors modern quake mitigation techniques, where adding weight to fault lines can subtly redistribute pressure. The Nazca might have grasped this principle intuitively, using mass offerings as geological ballast to steady the shifting earth. Water, too, played a role in this sacred bargaining. During droughts, the Nazca are known to have conducted water-calling ceremonies at glyphs aligned with underground aquifers. At the Weeping Eye glyph, archaeologists found stone channels funneling precious rainwater into spiral-shaped basins, a physical prayer for the skies to mirror the Earth's generosity. Even the line's construction hints at crisis management. The trench's depth varies precisely where soil composition changes, suggesting the Nazca adapted their designs to areas prone to erosion or sinkholes, effectively reinforcing the land while they drew upon it. But the most haunting evidence lies in what's missing. Compared to other ancient Peruvian sites, the Nazca Plateau shows remarkably few signs of quake damage, despite sitting atop one of South America's most active seismic zones. Coincidence or proof that their glyphs worked, not as literal stabilizers but as psychological and spiritual anchors? Modern disaster researchers note that communities investing in shared rituals often recover faster from catastrophes, their collective belief acting as a buffer against chaos. The Nazca Lines, then, might have been more than petitions to the gods. They could have been a covenant, an agreement etched into the desert that as long as the people remembered to tend the earth would remember to tend to them. And in that fragile balance, survival itself became a kind of art. Today, the Nazca Lines aren't just relics of an ancient mystery. They're the focus of a high-stakes digital treasure hunt, where researchers armed with artificial intelligence and satellite imagery are uncovering patterns invisible to the human eye. Teams from universities like Yamagata in Japan and the University of Dresden have trained machine learning algorithms to scan thousands of aerial photographs, identifying subtle geometric formations buried beneath centuries of wind and sediment. In just the past 5 years, these Nazca code crackers have unearthed over 50 new glyphs, including a surreal 200-foot-long feline figure hidden under layers of dust, proving the desert still holds secrets waiting to be decoded. What makes these modern discoveries so groundbreaking isn't just their quantity, but their precision. AI doesn't just spot shapes, it detects anomalies in soil composition and vegetation growth that hint at buried lines. When researchers fed historical climate data into their models, they made a startling realization. Many glyphs were placed where morning fog naturally clings longest, suggesting the Nazca might have used microclimates to make their designs briefly appear like ghostly projections at dawn. This wasn't just art, it was environmental engineering on a scale we're only beginning to comprehend. Yet the real revolution lies in pattern recognition. By comparing Nazca geometries with pre-Columbian textiles and pottery designs, AI has identified recurring mathematical sequences like the Fibonacci spiral in the hummingbird's wings that suggest a unified symbolic language. Some researchers now believe the lines functioned as a kind of prehistoric QR code, where overlapping shapes transmitted layered meanings to initiates. One algorithm even detected a previously unnoticed shadow alphabet, glyphs that only align to cast readable symbols during specific lunar phases, like a desert-sized Stonehenge with moving parts. But the most tantalizing breakthroughs come from cross-disciplinary collaborations. Archaeoastronomers combining AI with centuries-old indigenous star charts have found that newly discovered lines correlate with ancient supernova visible to the Nazca. A faint, zigzagging glyph near Palpa, for instance, mirrors the explosive appearance of the Crab Nebula in 1054 AD, a celestial event recorded by Chinese astronomers but previously unknown in the Americas. This hints at a global exchange of knowledge far earlier than historians imagined, with the desert serving as a shared ledger of the cosmos. The work isn't without controversy. Traditionalists argue algorithms risk imposing modern biases onto ancient designs, while hackers have attempted to sabotage databases, claiming the glyph's full revelation could trigger cataclysmic knowledge. Yet as drones equipped with LiDAR reveal subterranean chambers linked by geometric tunnels, one truth becomes clear. The Nazca didn't just leave behind art. They left a puzzle, and with every line uncovered by these digital explorers, we're not just learning about the past, we're deciphering a message meant to outlast time itself. From hidden tunnels beneath the desert to vanishing glyphs that flicker in and out of existence, the Nazca Lines continue to defy simple explanation. We've uncovered 30 astonishing secrets, each one peeling back another layer of this ancient enigma. The subterranean chambers that might have served as sacred libraries, the eerie skulls reshaped to mimic celestial beings, the glyphs that align not just with stars but with the very faults beneath our feet. Every discovery raises new questions. Were these lines celestial calendars, ritual pathways, or something far more profound? The precision of their mathematics hints at knowledge we're still unraveling, while their acoustic properties suggest the desert itself was once alive with sound and ceremony. Even the shadows they cast tell stories, marking time in ways that blur the line between science and spirituality. Yet for every answer, the Nazca left behind a dozen more mysteries. Why do some glyphs shift over time, as if resisting our scrutiny? What lies hidden in the sealed caves where paintings defy explanation? And how did a civilization without written language encode such complex ideas into the earth itself? The truth is, we may never fully grasp their intent, but that's the magic of these lines. They refuse to be pinned down, inviting us to keep searching, questioning, and marveling. Now it's your turn. Which secret left you breathless? Was it the hallucinogenic cacti that might have inspired their visions, the magnetic anomalies that hum beneath the surface, or the haunting possibility that these glyphs were meant as messages for the future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear which piece of this ancient puzzle resonates with you. And if you're hungry for more, dive deeper, explore documentaries, books, or even plan your own journey to stand where the Nazca once stood. Because the desert hasn't given up all its secrets yet, who knows, the next revelation could be yours to uncover.